Hare Krishna. So thank you very much for joining me today. This is a very special class on the first canto, first chapter, first shloka of Srimad Bhagavatam. And we start our class also the same way the Bhagavatam starts. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So we are starting with the very first verse of the first chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. We will not repeat for the sake of saving time the shlokas. You can hear me and maybe you can be muted and repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya yathonvayadhitarataschaarteshvabhijnaswarat Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Mukhyanti Yat Surayah Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Dhamna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Sri Krishna was son of Vasudeva. When you say Vasudeva, it means son of Vasudeva. Vasudeva also means one who is all pervading. So both senses is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And when you say Namaha, obviously it means he's offering obeisances. Vyasadeva is writing. Why is he offering obeisances? I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna. Why? Because he's the absolute truth. Satyam Param Dhimahi. He is the primeval cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. When you say Janmadi, it just means Janma, Mrityu, and Janma Sthiti and Samhara, or Srishti Sthiti and Samhara. For the person, it is Janma and Mrityu. For the universe or the world or the creation in general, it is Srishti Sthiti and Samhara. And what is happening is that we are all conscious of our own bodies. Srila Prabhupada gives an example in this verse that just like an individual technician or somebody may be knowing some part of the construction project or something, but the chief engineer will know everything about it. Or elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, he says how an individual person may know about his particular field where he will be doing cultivation, but the king would know the entire kingdom, all the details, or the surveyor would know all the details. So Kshetra is the body. Kshetrajna is one who knows the body. But the ultimate Kshetrajna is Bhagavan. O Namo Bhagavate. That is why personality of Godhead. When you say Janmadi, Srila Jiva Goswami says that he is the cause of everything, including the supreme Brahman, the impersonal Brahman. This is technically the very first verse of the Vedanta Sutra also in one sense, because the Vedanta Sutra talks about the same thing. Srimad Bhagavatam is Bhashyoyam Brahma Sutranam. That is the Vedanta philosophy is expressed as aphorisms. Veda means knowledge. Vedanta means the summary or the essence or the headlines or the conclusions of the Veda. Vedanta Sutra means the Vedanta explained in sutras or aphorisms. And The Bhagavatam is Bhashoyam Brahma Sutranam. Chapter after chapter, they state this. This is the commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, is the commentary on the Brahma Sutra or the Vedanta Sutra. And it was written by Vyasadeva, the author, in his ripened state of spiritual wisdom and maturity, on the instructions of his spiritual master Narada Muni, who heard it from Brahma, his father, who heard it in turn from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word mentioned here is Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye. It is the Hridaya, it is in the heart that the absolute truth is revealed. Divagyan Hriday Prakashita. It is not Divagyan Kapole Prakashita or something else. It is in the heart itself. So therefore, the Supreme Lord himself is revealing the supreme knowledge about himself. He is a person. God is a person. So the factual propounder of Vedanta philosophy is a Krishna conscious person who always engages in reading and understanding the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and teaching the purport of these books to the entire world. Yo Hareshcheva Jivena Bheda Bhakta Hari Priyaha. A true person who is very, very dear to Hari or Krishna is one who explains the fact that the Jiva, the living entity, and Bhagavan or Krishna are separate. They're not one and the same. So for that, for us to understand that God is a person, if God is a person, then he cannot be you or me. He will be different. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person will be teaching the purport of these books to the entire world. That is what Srila Prabhupada did on the instruction of his spiritual master. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur spoke on this very verse 1.1.1 each day for 3 months at Dhaka, current Bangladesh. That's how important it is. And it starts with Satyam Param Dhimahi, which means a Gayatri mantra. Very interestingly, I want to read to you this verse from the 12th canto towards the end. That's the very end of Srimad Bhagavatam, the conclusion of Bhagavatam. 12th canto, 13th chapter, 19th verse. It goes like, Kasmayena vibhashitoyam atulo jnana pradipah pura tadrupena chanaradaya munaye krishnaya tadrupina yogindraya tadatmanatha bhagavatrataaya karunyatas tachuddham vimalam vishogam satyam param dhimahi. So in one sense, the Bhagavatam starts with the Gayatri Mantra and concludes with the Gayatri Mantra. The very first verse says Satyam Param Dhimahi. I meditate upon the supreme truth. And now at the conclusion of the Bhagavatam also, the same auspicious sound Satyam Param Dhimahi are vibrated. There are words that are used here, Tadrupena, Tadrupina, and Tadatmanaha. They mean that Krishna is a person who originally spoke the Srimad Bhagavatam to Brahma. And then he continued to speak this literature through the agency of Narada Muni, through him Dvaipayana Vyasa, Shukadev Goswami, his son, and other great sages. So in other words, whenever saintly devotees they vibrate Srimad Bhagavatam, it is to be understood that Krishna himself is speaking the absolute truth through the agency of his representatives. So anyone who submissively hears his literature from the Lord's bona fide devotee or guru or somebody in the disciplic succession, he transcends the conditioned state of existence and he becomes qualified to meditate upon the absolute truth to serve him. He's an absolute truth, he's a person. And because he's personally dictating, that's literally. So in this very prayer, the first proposition holds that Lord Sri Krishna is the primeval Lord. Srila Prabhupada says, Bhagavate, primeval Lord, which means Prabhupada says no other transcendental nomenclature can belong to the can be said to be belonging to the absolute personality of Godhead. So God has to be known by the name Krishna. Krishna means all attractive. Sarva Akarshak Karshati iti Krishna. Many parts of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord himself asserts himself to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Arjuna later on glorifies him and he says, Parabrahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashwatam Divyam Adidevam Ajam Vibham Ahustam Rishe Sarve Devarshi Naradastata Asito Devalo Vyasa Swayam Cheva Prabhitime. Somebody may think that Arjuna, being a friend of Krishna, would be just glorifying him as God, just like psychophancy, or just glorifying a person for the sake of getting some favor. But no, he quotes the example of great personalities like Narada, Vyasa, Asita, Devala, all these people. And in the Padma Purana also it is stated that out of the innumerable names of the Lord, the name of Krishna is the principal one. Like we said, Vyasadeva compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam in the ripeness or the maturity of his spiritual wisdom. So the Vedas were compiled by him. From the Vedas, the single Veda that was there, he divided them into 4 Vedas. Then from Vedas, the Vedanta or the various Upanishads derived their existence. And from then, the Vedanta Sutra was evolved. The Puranas, Mahabharata, which is the Itihasa, they were all developed by Vyasadeva, compiled by him. But he was not satisfied. So his dissatisfaction was observed by his spiritual master Narada Muni, and he advised him to write about the transcendental activities of Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. It could have been called Krishna Purana, but it's called Bhagavatam, just to confirm the Paribhasha Sutra or the very definition of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is Bhagavan. And Prabhupada mentions that the best manner, the right approach to study Srimad Bhagavatam is to proceed step by step, chapter by chapter, not that you jump to the 10th canto. Srila Prabhupada uses the phrase that one must know about the substance, or one can get to know about the substance, which is the 10th canto, only after proceeding through the categories. The categories will lead eventually to the substance. And in the Vedic literature, Srila Prabhupada writes that the absolute personality of Godhead is chief amongst all living entities, Tamishwaranam, Paramam Maheshwaram. Also, Nityo Nityanam, Chetanas Chetananam, Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman, that one who maintains the many. Everybody from Brahma to the smallest ant, they are all individual living beings. Above Brahma, there are other living beings with individual capacities. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead it is not like he's not a living being. He's also a living being. He's also an individual like any other living beings. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Supreme Lord, is a supreme living being. He is the supreme greatest intelligence. He possesses the supermost inconceivable energies of all varieties. Srila Jiva Goswami in fact says the word Bhagavan presupposes his Achintya Shakti. He cannot be called Bhagavan if he's not inconceivable. So this is the greatness of the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada gives a beautiful example in this first shloka purport, that if a man's brain can produce a space satellite, then it is logical to understand that brains that are greater than man's can produce even more wonderful things, which are even more superior. So Prabhupada says that a reasonable man can easily accept this argument, except stubborn atheists who may never agree. But Srila Vyasadeva, however, immediately accepts the supreme or the superior intelligence as Parameshwara. Param Dhimahi. He offers his respectful obeisances to the supreme intelligence. Param Dhimahi means supreme intelligence, which is Parama Ishvara. And that Parameshwara is Sri Krishna, which is admitted in Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, everywhere else. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that Matta Parataram Nanyat Kinchit Asti Dhananjaya. I am Paratattva. There's nothing beyond me. So immediately Vyasadeva starts Bhagavatam by worshipping the Paratattva. And his transcendental activities, that of the Paratattva, the Supreme Person are described in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Srila Prabhupada mentions that unless one is thoroughly accomplished in the transcendental knowledge of the Lord, one can easily misunderstand the Lord's worshipable transcendental leelas called the Rasa dance, the Rasa Panchadhyaya, the 5 chapters that talk about him, and his loving affairs, the beautiful exchanges between the Supreme Lord and the gopis. This subject matter is very, very highly spiritual. Only those who are genuinely liberated, who have attained to the stage of a Paramahamsa, they can transcendently relish this rasa dance. So Vyasadeva does not assume that all of us will be able to understand it and everybody will be at that platform. So therefore, what does he say? What he is doing is that he makes us understand from the Gayatri Mantra from the very beginning, develop Brahminical qualities, develop the mode of goodness, and gradually reach a point where one can reach the stage of transcendently realizing the Supreme Lord, His name, His qualities, His pastimes, His paraphernalia, His entourage, all the Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela, all that. Bhagavatam essentially talks about the Swarupa of the Lord. In fact, the Bhagavatam is the Lord in one sense. And this is manifested by his internal potency, he acts through his energies. Parasya Shaktir Vividaiva Shruyata. He acts through his energies. And his internal potency is also there, the external potency is also there. The internal potency manifests the spiritual world, the external potency manifests the cosmic world, the material world that is in our experience. So that is what is explained by Vyasadeva in distinction. Dhamna svena sada nirasta kohakam satyam param dhimahi. Vyasadeva makes a clear distinction between the spiritual world, which is based on the internal potency, and the material world, which is in the external potency. Vyasadeva says that the manifested internal potency of the Lord is real, and the external manifested energy in the form of this material existence around us is only temporary and illusory. What example does he give for the illusory? He says it's just like mirage in the desert. In the desert, a mirage is not actually water. It appears like water. Real water is somewhere else. So similarly, the cosmic creation appears as reality. The world around us appears as reality, but the reality of which this is, it is just a shadow. The original, the form is the spiritual world. The absolute truth is in the spiritual sky. And I mean, that doesn't mean that he is not in the material world. Parasya Brahmana Shaktis Tathaivam Akilam Jagat. Sarvam Vishnumayam Jagat. It is he himself expands in many ways, his energies expand as this whole world. And he acts through his energies. And he can be in one place and be simultaneously present everywhere through his energies and his manifestation. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pradibhavitavis Tabire Eva Nija Rupa Tayakalabi Goloka Eva Nivasati Akilatma Buddha. He resides in Goloka, his spiritual world, and is present still across the world. That is Govinda, the Adi Purusham, the primeval Lord, the Bhagavan who is talked about. When you say Vasudeva, just to clarify who is the Vasudeva, he may be all pervading, he's the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. But it is not like he was born through a normal male-female union. Vasudeva position is when the heart is pure in consciousness. So literally it is mentioned that Krishna was transferred from the heart of Vasudeva into the heart of Devaki. And he appeared in his wonderful transcendental four-armed form when he was requested to revert to his two-armed form. Just the point that Vasudeva position, the situation when the heart is pure consciousness and can receive the Supreme Lord in it. That is the Vasudeva position. So the Vasudeva position gives birth to Vasudeva. That is what happens. But it is not some exotic simile that is being brought about. Literally also Krishna's eternal parents are Yashoda and Nandbaba, and of course there is Vasudeva and Devaki. But the point that is mentioned here, that the Trisargo Mrisha, when you say Trisarga, Srila Jiva Goswami compares this with the Gayatri itself. The Gayatri talks about three levels of three worlds. We know that there is Bhuloka, then above that is Bhuvarloka, above that is Suvarloka. These three names are brought out in the Brahma Gayatri. But Srila Jiva Goswami says clearly, this translate into Yatra Trisargom Risha. Trisarga is that, those three kinds of creation. It refers to the material universe. And the fact that it is Brahma Hridaya Adi Kave, it is essentially because of the fact that Brahma was actually meditating on the Supreme Lord. Sila, a few other points that I have to make on this, that the goal of chanting this Brahma Gayatri is the goal of Bhagavatam, which is what? Meditation on Krishna, the absolute truth. The word, many words in this, the Om itself, which is the first word of the Gayatri, Brahma Gayatri, translates according to Srila Jiva Goswami to Janmadhyasa Yataha, which is the original source. And there is a word that is used, Charteshu Abhijna Swarad. When you say Abhijna, it means the Supreme Lord is all cognizant. He knows everything. He knows about himself inside and outside, and he knows about everyone else inside and outside more than what they themselves know about them. So he is Abhijna. Yet, all these qualities are connected to the fact that he is full of independence. Swarat. He is a transcendental autocrat. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur uses this phrase in Harinam Chintamani. He is a transcendental autocrat. And when you say Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikave, the Supreme Lord manifested the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam into the heart of Brahma. Why? Because Brahma was in a prayerful mood. Because when there is a prayerful mood of the enlightenment of Brahma Gayatri, the Lord very, very mercifully, He engages our thoughts in meditation on Him. So by meditating on the Supreme Lord, meditation on Krishna, meditation on Brahma Gayatri, fundamentally it means that the chanting the Brahma Gayatri has the same goal of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is meditating on Krishna, the absolute truth. And that is where it starts. And Srila Prabhupada clearly distinguishes the greatness of the Supreme Lord as opposed to us. Because he does that Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo, like fire is the reflection of water is seen in fire, so on and so forth. All these are illusory representations that are mentioned, just like the mirage. By his power, by his greatness, by his opulence, he uses the phrase Mukhyanti Yat Suryaha. The demigods are also bewildered by him, not just ordinary personalities. Which just means that, like in the Bhagavad Gita, also it is mentioned, Nate Vidu Suragana. It's very clear. Nate, the whole Nate Vidu meaning one doesn't know that whether it is any of the person. Na Vidur Devo na Danava. Nobody can understand the Supreme Lord properly. And the example beautifully given to distinguish the living entity and Krishna by Srila Prabhupada is that there's a gold ring and the gold necklace. They're all qualitatively one with the gold in the mind. But quantitatively, the gold of the mind is different. Therefore, the absolute truth is simultaneously one and different. He establishes Achintya Veda Veda in the purport. Nothing is absolutely equal with the absolute truth. He is called Asamordhva. He cannot be equal. Nacha Samastya Patikasya Drishyate. He cannot be equal, he cannot be surpassed. Nothing is absolutely equal to the absolute truth. But at the same time, nothing is independent of the absolute truth. Everything is related to the supreme truth, in the absolute truth, but everything is not the absolute truth. We have our existence, which is dependent on the absolute truth. So therefore, the whole point of this understanding is that we should eventually develop a meditative mood towards the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. The entire Bhagavatam, right through, focuses on this. And the whole goal of the entire Guru Parampara, all the bona fide disciplic succession, Srila Prabhupada raises this point several times in the early shlokas of the Srimad Bhagavatam, including going onwards, he mentions that like a fruit is being handled uh, very meticulously, very carefully. It is handed over from the top branch to the bottom branch. It is not broken. Similarly, the knowledge that is received through the Guru Parampara is unbroken. There is no alteration of it. So, the Sambandha Abhidaya Prayojana, Veda Shastra Purana ka Sambandha Abhidaya Prayojana, all the Vedic literature is based entirely on these things. Sambandha, Abhidaya, and Prayojana. What is Sambandha? The connection to the Supreme Lord. What is Abhidaya? The various activities which we perform to revive that relationship. And Prayojana is the goal or the result or the purpose of all these activities. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, about whom Srila Prabhupada devotes at least 50 pages just before Srimad Bhagavatam commences with the first shloka, just to indicate that the person Bhagavat, by serving him, by knowing about the person Bhagavat, because it's Krishna, Krishna Chaitanya, he came Nija Bhakti Yogam to demonstrate. So first you understand the person Bhagavata, and then the book Bhagavata. And later on, when we chanted this prayer a little earlier, and later on it will come in the Bhagavatam. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya means regularly listening or hearing classes with rapt attention on a daily basis of Srimad Bhagavatam. And by serving the person Bhagavat, one can reach a position where devotion is firmly established in the heart as an irrevocable fact, Prabhupada uses. Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, therefore, the person Bhagavad and Bhagavan himself, says, Gayatri ra artaye grantha arambhana satyam param sambandha dhimahi sadhana prayojana. This is in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, there is an explanation of the Brahma Gayatri mantra. The absolute truth, Satyam Param, it indicates the relationship. We meditate on him, Dhimahi, that is the Abhideya, the activities that are required to develop the understanding of the relationship and the prayojana as well, the goal. The Supreme Lord is the means as well as the goal. And the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter after chapter, canto after canto, leads us to the ultimate conclusion of how Krishna is the supreme object of meditation. And Srila Sridhar Swami confirms that some people came up with this bogus theory that Bhagavatam was not written by Vyasadeva but by an impostor called Vopadeva. And so Sridhar Swami confirms that Purana, great Purana of 18,000 verses and 12 cantos. I think there are 335 odd chapters in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He says that Hayagriva's Brahma Vidya, Vritrasura's Vada, all this is explained in this Bhagavatam. He's just confirming that it is that book that we are talking about. So, Krishna Shaktavesh Avatara, Vyasadeva, Dvaipana Vyasa, compile this in his ripened state of Vedic wisdom, absolute wisdom of the absolute truth. Like we discussed earlier, God means just controller, but the absolute truth, Satyam Param, means a summum bonum. It includes everything, and that everything includes Brahman also. So the very first text, the absolute truth, is explained. The second text talks about actual religion, Dharma Projita Kaitava Atra Parama. So cheating religion is not an actual religion is defined. And the third, Muhuraho Rasiko Bhuvi Bhavaka, it invites people to taste the Bhagavatam's sweetness. That is the third verse. They're tasting sweetness of Bhagavatam, which is not from Krishna, tasting the sweetness of Krishna. That's the very purpose of Bhagavatam. That is a meditation of Bhagavatam. And it is because Brahma meditated on the Bhagavatam that he was revealed Hridaya Adi Kavaye. And then it continued further down the line. And what is the right way to receive this knowledge? Through bona fide disciplic succession. So we understood in today's verse that how the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of creation, sustenance, and annihilation. He originally revealed the knowledge of He Himself and everything else through the knowledge of Bhagavatam into Brahma's heart. And his opulence and his bewildering potency is such that even great demigods may get bewildered. how is he the creator? He's not creator just of the spiritual world, which is eternal, but of the material manifestation, which is illusory. The example given is that of how um, water is reflected in fire and so on. And that person who bewilders everyone in the material universe indirectly through the agency of the three modes, sattvagun, rajagun, tamagun, or goodness, passion, and ignorance, and through his internal potency in the spiritual world in every way, to that supreme absolute truth, that summum bonum, I offer my obeisances, because he's the supreme absolute truth, including being the source of even the supreme Brahman, the impersonal aspect of the supreme truth. Is the Satyam Param Dhimahi. So that is the form. Of course, there are many other uh, means to look at it, many other perspectives to look at it, where it is mentioned that when you say Janmadhyasa, it's the person who, after his birth, right away left Mathura and went to Gokula. That is also Krishna. And there is a greater, more, uh, slightly more esoteric interpretation also of Krishna in relationship with the gopis and other Vrajavasis. We won't get into that because of dearth and paucity of time. So I want to conclude today's session with immense gratitude to all of you for your patient listening, and especially to many of you who kept um, your videos on, which is a rare thing in these days. To assume people to keep their videos on is a major thing, especially with slow network speeds. Unfortunately, there are a few people who arrived quite late by the time I admitted them. The class is almost going to conclude. We can take maybe just one or two questions. Who would like to ask a question?
Haribol Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I don't have a question, but regarding this first slok, I heard from Gaur Krishnadas Prabhuji's lectures.
Yeah.
He says, Satyam Param Dhimahi. What is that Satya? That Satya is defined in Garbhastuti. Satya Vratam Satya Param Satyam Satya Sindhu. The whole sloka is, and who is addressing all the demigods? Demigod whom we are addressing, the one in the womb of Devaki Mata. So
Wonderful.
this is what it defines, that Satyam Param Dham is nobody other than Lord Sri Krishna, who is Devaki Nanda. Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Also, Sripad Madhvacharya talks about this point, that Satyam, Satyam, Punas Satyam, Udrita Bhujamuchate, Veda Shastrat Param Nasti, Na Devam Keshavat Param. There is nobody who is beyond the Supreme Lord. This is absolute truth. There's nothing beyond this. He is the ultimate. Thank you for that. Who else wants to ask a question or contribute something?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dhanvat Pranam.
No, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for the lecture in Kartik Mahina. Prabhuji, same question is very simple. What is the meaning of this verse that is often quoted? Chetanas, Chetananam.
Oh, Chetanas, Chetananam. Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So basically, it is from the Upanishad, Shvetashatra Upanishad, which talks about Nityo Nityanam, Chetanas Chetananam. So there is the eternal, supreme one eternal, and there are many. The one expanded into many. Eko Bahunam, the one expanded into many. Yo Vidadadika Aman, to fulfill their desires. He is the one who maintains their desires. He maintains them by fulfilling their desires also. Sa atma yena pashyanti tesham shanti shashwati notaresham. One who understands this fact, that that one maintains the others. He is peaceful, not others, because everyone else is sada samudvignadhyam. Everybody is completely bewildered and completely perplexed, that always anxious about this temporary body and this existence, because they don't understand that he is the supreme maintainer. So one of the symptoms of surrender is goptrupte varanam, the understanding that Krishna is the maintainer. So this is the essence of this verse. Is that fine?
Yes.
Okay. So if there are no other questions, we can conclude. I'm sorry, some of you had difficulties logging in because this connection was 2 separate links were sent out or whatever. But all is well that ends well. We had many of you who normally attend my sessions have joined after a long time. Welcome back. And for those of you who are regular, I seek your constant feedback on how these sessions can make sense to everyone and be improved further. Thank you for your patience. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nita Nita Gaur Sitana Premanande. Hare Krishna.
Just great, Rishi Kumar Prabhuji ki jai.
Very
Krishna
good.
Prabhuji, please accept my obeisances.
Vancha kalpatu Krishna.
So I'm ending the meeting now. Thank you.